Have you ever noticed how some people go through absolutely awful situations and come out the other side smiling, as if nothing happened? As if everything were perfectly fine. Their long-term relationship ends. Oh, it was for the best. I was already thinking about leaving anyway. They lose their job. I'm taking the opportunity to rest. I needed this. Someone important disappears from their life. We drifted apart, it happens. Always with that light tone. Always with that I'm great moving forward energy. Always posting on social media like life is just one continuous upgrade. And you look at that and think either this person is incredibly strong or something is very, very wrong underneath. Spoiler, it's usually the second one. Because there is a specific type of person who has mastered this so well they don't even notice anymore. Someone who turned pretending to be fine into second nature. Someone who built such a convincing persona that sometimes even they believe it, but underneath is a silent chaos no one sees. And maybe you know someone like that, or maybe you are that person. Let's start with the obvious. Everyone pretends to be okay sometimes. That's normal. It's basic social etiquette. No one wants to break down at the grocery checkout when the cashier asks, "How are you?" But there's a huge difference between pretending to be okay occasionally and building your entire identity around always being okay. And that's what we're talking about here. There's a type of person who does not allow themselves to have a bad day, who can't admit that something affected them, who always, always finds a way to twist the situation so it looks like they're in control. And listen, that's not strength, that's defense. Because here's what happens. At some point in this person's life, probably as a child or teenager, they learned that showing pain was dangerous. Maybe their parents didn't know how to handle emotions. Maybe they minimized everything the child felt. It's not that big a deal. You're overreacting. Get over it. It could be worse. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe their parents were so emotionally fragile that the child had to be the strong one, the kid who never caused trouble, who was always okay, who handled everything alone. Either way, the message they internalized was the same. Your emotions are a problem. Your suffering is inconvenient. No one wants to deal with it. So they learned to swallow it, and over time swallowing became automatic. It became reflex. It became identity. Now, decades later, this person doesn't even recognize when they're not okay. They feel that tightness in the chest, that anxiety, that emptiness, but immediately rationalize it. I'm just tired. It's just stress. It'll pass tomorrow. And they keep going. They go to work. They hang out with friends. They post smiling photos. They reply to messages with enthusiasm. Because stopping would mean admitting something is wrong. And admitting something is wrong would break the character they've spent their whole life building. The character of the person who has everything under control, who doesn't get shaken, who is strong, who keeps moving forward no matter what. And here's the real problem. That character isn't just for other people. It's for themselves too. They genuinely believe they're fine. They look at their own life and think, everything's great. I don't know why I feel so empty. They rationalize every symptom, every sign of the body screaming for help, and they keep pushing. Until one day, and this always happens, the body stops asking politely and just collapses. It might be a sudden anxiety attack. It might be burnout that hits out of nowhere. It might be that morning when they simply cannot get out of bed and don't understand why, because they were fine. They were always fine, except they weren't. They never were. They were just stacking things, swallowing, pretending so well they fooled even themselves. And then, when they finally fall apart, they feel guilty. Because strong people don't fall apart, right? People who have everything under control don't have breakdowns. So they get up quickly, wipe their tears, and slip back into the character. I'm fine, it was just a moment, it's over. And the cycle starts again. Because admitting they're not okay would also mean admitting that all these years of I'm great were a lie. It would mean dismantling the identity they built. It would mean being vulnerable in a way they never learned how to be. So it's easier to keep pretending, to keep smiling, to keep saying everything is under control, even when it's not, even when it never was. And the saddest part? Most people around them actually believe it. They believe this person is strong, that they handle everything easily, that they don't need help, and this person lets them believe it's because that's what they've always done. But there's an even more complicated layer to all of this. These people aren't just pretending on the outside. They've developed an entire system of self-sabotage disguised as self-protection. Let me explain. When you spend years swallowing your emotions, your brain has to do something with all that energy, because feelings don't disappear just because you ignore them. They simply leak out in other ways, and usually they leak out in ways you don't even connect to the original problem. For example, the person who is always busy, always juggling a million projects, always running from one thing to the next, never stopping. It's not because they're productive, it's because stopping hurts. Stopping means being alone with their own thoughts. It means feeling the things they've spent years avoiding, so they fill their schedule, keep the mind busy, keep the body moving, because movement is easier than feeling. Or the person who is always helping everyone else, always available, always fixing other people's problems, never says no. It looks like altruism, right? But in reality, it's escape. It's so much easier to dive into someone else's problems than face your own. It's so much more comfortable to feel needed than to admit you need help. And then there are the people who turn everything into a joke, always with a witty comeback, always laughing at themselves, always playing it off. Humor is an incredible defense mechanism, because if you laugh first, no one can use it against you. If you turn your pain into comedy, it stops being real. At least that's what it feels like. But here's the problem. All these strategies work for a while. You really can avoid feeling. You can keep everything shoved down. You can function in the world as if you're perfectly fine. Until you can't, because there's a limit. There's a maximum capacity for how much you can carry without processing. And when you hit that limit, things start leaking out in ways you can't control. It might look like insomnia, or constant irritability you can't explain, or overeating or not eating at all, or that bone-deep exhaustion that doesn't go away no matter how much you sleep. It might look like withdrawing from people without realizing it, losing interest in things you used to love, feeling like you're watching your own life from the outside, disconnected from everything. Those are symptoms. But because these people learn to ignore signs early on, they ignore these too. I'm just tired. It's just a phase. Work has been intense. Once things calm down, I'll feel better. There's always a rational justification. Always an external explanation. Never. Maybe I'm not handling things as well as I think. And life starts becoming smaller, more controlled, safer. Because unconsciously these people start avoiding anything that might make them feel. They stop taking risks. They stop opening up. They keep everything surface level. They keep everyone at a safe distance, because real intimacy requires vulnerability. And vulnerability means showing the hurt parts. And showing the hurt parts means admitting they exist. That would break the character. So it feels safer to be alone. Safer to keep people around but never close. Safer to have 1,000 acquaintances than one real friend. Because a real friend sees through the mask. And that is terrifying. So these people build entire lives that look full but feel empty. Lives that look connected but feel profoundly lonely. Lives that look functional but are quietly falling apart on the inside. And no one notices because they got too good at hiding it. So good that sometimes even they don't see it anymore. Now let's talk about something no one mentions. The addiction to being okay. Because that's what we're talking about here. A real addiction. These people become addicted to the feeling of being in control. To not needing anyone. To being that unshakable rock everyone can rely on. And like any addiction, the more you use it, the more you need it. So every time something bad happens, it becomes an opportunity to prove to themselves and to everyone else that they can handle it, that they overcome, that they're strong. Relationship ends? Look how fine I am. Lose someone important? Look how quickly I moved on. Life hits them hard. Look how I turned this into a lesson. It becomes an invisible competition against their own humanity. And the reward? Admiration. People look at them and think, wow, they're so strong. And that feeds the cycle, because finally, they receive validation. Not for being vulnerable, but for not being vulnerable. But there's a heavy price for that, because you can't be admired for your strength and receive care for your weakness. Not at the same time. So these people choose. Consciously or unconsciously, they choose admiration over connection, performance over authenticity. And they get stuck there. Because now everyone expects them to be strong. Everyone counts on them. Everyone comes to them to vent their problems because they always handle everything so well. And they can't break that contract. They can't suddenly turn around and say, actually, I can't take this anymore. Because that would disappoint everyone. That would mean admitting that the character was fake. So they keep going. Hold on a little longer. Carry a little more. And they drift further and further away from themselves. There's a specific moment that happens with people like this. A moment when they're going through something truly difficult and someone asks, are you okay? And they automatically answer, yeah, I'm great. But for a split second, deep inside, they feel the urge to scream, no. But they don't scream. Because they don't know how. Because even if they wanted to, even if they tried, the words wouldn't come out. Their whole body refuses. All those years of training, repression, control, they've become muscle memory, instinct. So they smile. Everything's great, thanks for asking. And the other person walks away satisfied. Because they got the answer they expected, and they stay there, alone again, with that no stuck in their throat, with that urge to collapse that never turns into an actual collapse, and then they feel guilty about it. Why can't I just ask for help? Why do I have to be like this? But it's not a choice, not anymore. It's programming. And the strangest part? These people are usually the first ones to tell others, you can vent to me. You don't have to pretend you're okay. I'm here for you. They understand in theory that vulnerability matters, that asking for help is healthy, that no one needs to be strong all the time, They just can't apply it to themselves because for everyone else it's allowed. For everyone else it's valid to not be okay, except for them. They need to be the exception. They need to be different. They need to be strong, and they carry that alone until they can't anymore. But here's where things get really interesting. These people aren't just hiding pain, they're hiding anger. And this is the part no one talks about. Because underneath all that calm, all that I'm fine, all that understanding and emotional stability, there's a deep anger. An anger that was never expressed, never validated, never allowed to exist. Anger at having to be strong all the time. Anger that no one ever truly asks how they are. Anger at always being the one who solves things, who holds everything together, who endures. Anger because the one time they did try to be vulnerable, they were ignored, minimized, or treated like a burden. But that anger can't appear, because anger breaks the character. The calm person, the stable one, the one with everything under control, so it gets swallowed, repressed, and begins to transform into other things. Sometimes it becomes constant irritation over tiny things. The person who explodes because someone didn't wash the dishes or because traffic is slow, it's not about the dishes. It's never about the dishes. It's about years of I'm fine when they weren't. Years of no problem when it was a problem. Years of swallowing, until the smallest thing becomes the last straw. Sometimes that anger turns into impossible perfectionism. The person who cannot relax unless everything is perfect, who demands superhuman standards from themselves, who is never satisfied with anything they do. Because if everything is perfect, they don't have to feel. They don't have to stop. They don't have to face the emptiness. And sometimes, and this is the saddest part, it turns into anger at themselves. Because they look at their own life and think, why can't I just open up? Why can't I ask for help? What's wrong with me? And then the anger that should be directed outward gets redirected inward. It becomes brutal self-criticism. It becomes that internal voice that never stops attacking. You're weak for feeling this way. Other people deal with worse and don't complain. Stop being dramatic. You don't have the right to feel bad. It's the same voice they heard growing up, just internalized now. And here's the full cycle. They feel bad. They blame themselves for feeling bad, which makes them feel worse, which increases the guilt. And the cycle repeats endlessly. And on the outside? On the outside, it's still the same smile. The same I'm great. The same person who looks like they have everything figured out. But there's another side to that repressed anger. A side that's even more dangerous. It starts poisoning their relationships. Because even if these people never express anger outright, it leaks in passive-aggressive comments, in emotional distance, in unrealistic expectations of others, like they never ask for help but resent people for not offering. They say they're fine but expect others to insist, to see through the mask. And when others don't, it confirms their belief that no one truly cares. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. They push people away with constant I'm fine. People believe them and stop asking. Then they feel abandoned and alone, and use that as proof that they were right all along, that you can't trust anyone, that they can only rely on themselves, and the cycle continues. Stronger, lonelier, more painful, but always pretending everything is under control. Because admitting the anger would mean admitting the pain, and admitting the pain would mean dismantling everything, the structure, the identity, the meaning they built to survive. So it feels safer to keep everything buried, hidden, pretending it doesn't exist, even if it's destroying them from the inside, slowly, silently. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. What happens when these people finally break? Because eventually they do break. It might take years, but there's a limit to how much weight a person can carry alone. And when they break, it's terrifying. It's completely out of control. Because when you spend years, maybe your whole life, holding everything in, it doesn't leak out slowly. It comes out all at once, like a dam bursting. And the person doesn't even recognize themselves. Because they were always the strong one, the one who had everything under control. And now they're on the floor, unable to breathe, unable to stop crying, unable to function. And the worst part, they feel guilty. Even in the middle of the collapse, even when their body is literally screaming for help, they're blaming themselves for being weak. I can't be like this. I need to pull myself together. People depend on me. Even while falling apart, they're still trying to return to the character. But here's what's important to understand. This collapse is not failure. It's the body doing the work the mind refused to do. It's the organism saying, enough. You can't keep going like this. You need to stop and feel these things now, even if it has to force you. But for someone who has always been in control, losing control is terrifying. It confirms every fear they've ever had, that if they let their guard down, they will completely fall apart. And they are falling apart. So the fear feels justified. And that makes them build their walls even higher afterward, because now they have proof that they can't afford to feel, that they need to be even more controlled, even more contained. But there's another possibility, rare but possible. Sometimes in this moment of complete collapse, something shifts. Because when you finally fall apart in the exact way you always feared, and the world doesn't end, and you wake up the next day still breathing, something opens. The possibility that maybe you don't need to be strong all the time, that maybe it's okay to not be okay. But reaching this point requires something incredibly difficult, letting someone see you. Because up until now, they always fell apart alone. In the bathroom, in the car, at 3 a.m. when no one was awake. Always hidden. But if by some miracle, in that moment of breaking, someone is there, someone who doesn't try to fix it, doesn't minimize it, just stays, it can be the start of something different. It can be the first time they realize vulnerability doesn't kill, that showing pain doesn't mean rejection, that they can be human and still be loved. But this is rare, because these people have become so good at pushing everyone away that by the time they break, they're usually alone. That's actually how they designed it, unconsciously. So the collapse just becomes one more thing to overcome alone, one more proof of strength, one more story of, look how I fell and got back up. And the pattern continues, because the uncomfortable truth is this: breaking doesn't change anything by itself. You can break 1,000 times and still rebuild the same walls, repeat the same patterns. Real change only happens when you choose consciously to do something different, when you choose, despite all the fear, to be seen, to be vulnerable, to ask for help. And that is far more terrifying than any breakdown, because breakdown is loss of control. But intentional vulnerability, that is a choice. And choosing to be vulnerable after spending your entire life avoiding it is like jumping off a cliff and hoping there's something to catch you. It's terrifying. It goes against every instinct. It's everything they swore they would never do. But it is also the only real way out. So where does this leave us? Well, if you saw yourself in any part of this, you're probably waiting for me to tell you what to do, how to fix it, how to stop being like this. But there's no formula, there's no magic step by step that suddenly turns you into someone who knows how to be vulnerable. What there is are awareness and small choices. First, noticing that you do this, that you minimize, that you swallow things, that you perform strength even when you're falling apart. And not to blame yourself, just to see. Because you won't change what you can't even recognize. Then begin to question it. The next time you say, I'm fine, ask yourself, am I really, or is this just automatic? When you feel the urge to open up and then swallow it back down, ask, well, what am I afraid will happen if I say something? Small things, tiny cracks in the pattern. And maybe at some point with someone who feels safe, you take a risk. You answer honestly when someone asks how you are, not the rehearsed answer, the truth. Honestly, I'm a little overwhelmed. It's been a rough week. I'm not doing great, actually. It seems so small. But for someone who has spent their entire life doing the opposite, it's huge. And yes, it's possible the person won't know what to do with it. They might change the subject. It might feel awkward, but it's also possible they won't. It's possible they'll just say, I get it, and stay there with you. And that alone is something. Because people like this don't need someone to solve their problems. They need someone who validates that it's okay to have problems. Someone who shows them that they can be struggling and still be worthy of care, that they don't have to perform all the time, that their humanity isn't a burden. And this doesn't happen once and magically fix everything. It's something you build. It's repetition. It's choosing vulnerability again and again until it stops being terrifying. It won't be perfect. You'll fall back into old habits 1,000 times. You'll break down alone again. You'll pretend you're fine when you're not. And that's okay. It's not about being perfect at this. It's about trying differently sometimes. And if you know someone like this, or someone who always says they're fine, who's always helping everyone else, who never seems to need anything, ask again. Don't accept the first, I'm great. Say, are you really okay? It's okay if you're not, And don't try to fix them. Just stay. Just validate, because sometimes the most important thing you can do for someone who pretends to be okay is show them they don't have to pretend with you, that it's okay to not be okay, that you don't think less of them, that they are still worthy of love, of care, of connection, especially when they're hurting. So that's it. There's no guaranteed happy ending here, no instant transformation, just the possibility of starting differently, of trying differently, of being a little more human and a little less of a character. And maybe that's enough. Drop in the comments. Are you like this too? Or do you know someone who is? Sometimes just naming the thing already helps. See you in the next one.